Hey everyone, Sassy Mouse here, and as promised, I'm going to be doing a video about how to survive the holidays today. Let's start by talking about a few ways that the holidays can be a bit difficult. The biggest one is going to be conflict with your family, particularly if your lifestyle is something that your family may judge for one reason or another. This could be because of your sexual identity or your relationship status in various different forms. It could be because of your gender identity as well. It could be because of your choice of profession, particularly if you are working in a profession that is considered problematic by a lot of people, such as sex work, or you are in the drug business in some way. Although there are other professions that families can find issues with. I mean, every family has some nonsense profession that they're like, oh, I don't like that you're working in that field, right? It doesn't have to be something on the more extreme ends of that spectrum. It could be because of your own substance use problems or some other part of your life that you're struggling to deal with. It could be for a lot of reasons that you have conflict with your family. This can lead to feelings of being judged, which most people really don't enjoy and can make the holidays very difficult to go through. You may also have a family that has a lot of dysfunction. Some families are just, for lack of a better term, broken. They aren't capable of having a chill, enjoyable holiday with each other. You may also have concerns about how to manage different parts of your life, particularly if you do have a substance use habit of some kind. How do you manage that and essentially stay well while around family members who may judge you for the choice to use or for that problem in your life? You may also have mental health problems that are a major concern for you. Seasonal depression and chronic depression are two really big ones that can really affect the holidays and make them very difficult to enjoy. It can make it hard to be around other people who are just shitting out fucking peppermint, right? People who are obnoxiously happy about the holidays can be very difficult to be around if you are feeling depressed or have some other mental health condition. It's hard to get into that festivity when you're dealing with your own inner demons. As a result, it can be very difficult to figure out how you're going to manage these holiday festivities. This year, of course, one of the other big concerns is COVID, although health issues may also be a concern in any year. Another concern may be health issues for your physical health. People with compromised immune systems, chronic health issues, or who are particularly susceptible to the flu or pneumonia may have a hard time with holidays in any year. And this year, 2020, we are facing a national pandemic, which makes the holidays even more challenging than they normally are. Getting together with family could put you or one of your other family members at risk of getting sick and potentially dying. Where I'm at, the numbers are continuing to go up. We are at the highest peak of the entire year. At this point, going to holiday festivities is quite the gamble, and it can be very risky to yourself or to others. There may also be many other reasons that you just don't enjoy the holiday. I cannot cover every reason that someone would find the holidays difficult and something that they need to essentially survive. But whatever your reasons are, hopefully there will be some tips in this video that will help you, even if not everything applies. So the first option, and this is especially true this year, is to completely opt out of the holidays. I made a video about why we opted out of Thanksgiving. This year, the choice to opt out of Christmas and possibly New Year's may also be a valid choice for many people. choosing to celebrate the holiday at your own home with your small group of people that live in the same house with you may be a better option than having a big family gathering, or even a medium family gathering, or even a small family gathering, depending on who's going to be there. For example, my dad moved to the state recently. This is the first time in a long time that I could potentially spend the holidays with him, but because he is living with a family member who has a health condition that puts him at extra high risk of dying from COVID, we are choosing to not celebrate the holiday with them this year because it is far too risky putting that family member's life at risk, despite how much I would love to spend it with my father. This year, the pandemic may give you a great option to opt out of a holiday that normally causes you a great amount of stress. If you're given the opportunity and you would like to take it, by all means, go for it. Use this as a reason to avoid the holiday this year. You may also choose to do teleholiday, where you call or video chat with the people who you really do want to see on this holiday rather than going and seeing them in person. Depending on how it goes, you could do a Friendsgiving or Friendsmas party where you all get on some sort of group video chat together and spend a few hours hanging out and playing games and potentially even eating your holiday dinner with them. You can do this with family as well, although family is sometimes a little harder to convince of this, and certain family members who are not particularly tech savvy might be a little bit harder to get in on the game. At the end of the day, this year is a special case where the health concerns and the option to use this pandemic as an out give some opportunity to avoid what could potentially be a very stressful holiday. However, if you do choose to have some sort of gathering with your family, encourage them to keep it smaller than you might do in a normal year, unless your family is normally very small, in which case the best thing to do at that point is to follow distancing rules as best you can in whatever place you celebrate the holiday. If you typically celebrate your holiday in a relatively small area, it may be best to wear a mask for the holiday outside of when you are actively eating, and when you do eat, choosing to stay as far away from people as you possibly can. In a bigger space, trying to keep at least 6 feet between people who do not live in the same house is generally best. You could choose to have the holiday outside if the weather permits, at least in part, or various other accommodations that allow you to celebrate this holiday with the people you want to be around, but prevent the spreading of the disease to people who may be more vulnerable. All in all, celebrate wisely this year. It's a difficult year with a difficult end to that year, and everyone wants an escape from the things that have been happening in 2020. But risking other people's health is not the way to do it. Regardless of the year and the things that have been going on, the holidays can be a very stressful time for a lot of people. It can cause a lot of heartache and hardship in people's lives. It can exacerbate pre-existing mental health conditions. It can also be a time when you're thinking of the past year and thinking about resolutions and changes you want to make and things that you want to change in your life that could be very difficult. Because of this, the holidays is a great time to consider engaging in some counseling, whether it's short-term or long-term counseling. If you are struggling with something in your life that you really want to change, getting help with that can be really important. There are many things that people would like to change. They might want to start exercising more, or eating more healthy, or eliminating toxic people from their lives, or various other things. If there is something you would like to change, getting professional assistance with it never hurts. Counseling doesn't necessarily have to be in person. There are many services that allow you to do counseling via a video call or some online services. So even if you're not comfortable going and seeing someone in person, or you would like to avoid being around people this year, there are options to get counseling without necessarily having to see someone. Now that said, if you are interested in doing something like joining a Suboxone program or getting on Vivitrol or getting on Methadone, all of those do require some form of in-person visit. However, the interaction that you get outside of just the medication is important as well. And if the particular program you're going to pretty much just gives you the medication and doesn't really do any work around your addiction itself, it's probably helpful to get someone who can do that to outside of just the program that you're going to. Speaking of medications, if you are on any medication, whether that is a medication to treat addiction or some other mental health medication that helps you stay stable and get through the holidays, it could be an anxiety med, depression meds, whatever, meds for schizophrenia, it is very important during the holidays to stay on that medication, to use it as good as you possibly can, because maintaining your medical regimen will help you get through the holidays more smoothly. Going onto and off of or adjusting your meds or different things like that can be exacerbated by the holidays. So it is best to both stay on your medication, take your medication as prescribed, and make sure that you have enough to get through the entire holiday season if possible. Certain medications such as methadone you may be in the daily dosing phase and going to the clinic every day. At that point, just make sure you keep going. But for medications where you can get a prescription, making sure you have it to carry you through the whole holiday is very important to make your life a lot easier and help you transition through the holidays and into the next year. This is particularly true of mental health medications, which help keep you stable through the challenging and sometimes very stupid interactions with family members. One final note on counseling. This time of year, winter, the time when holidays occur, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, is difficult. It is a time when there is a lot of stress and expectation. People want you to be bursting with all the holiday joy you can muster. It's a time when there's very little sunlight and lots of darkness, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a time when you start thinking about the things that you wish you had done differently this last year, the parts of your life that you're not happy with, and various other things that can cause a pretty deep level of depression. For some people, this depression can lead to thoughts of ending it. If you have struggled with suicidal thoughts or are struggling with suicidal thoughts, please contact the suicide helpline. The phone number is on the screen. However, if you are uncomfortable talking to someone on the phone, there are also options to do it via a chat box online that are helpful if you are hearing impaired or if you just are not comfortable talking about these things with a person on the phone. If you're not in the United States, you can look up your local suicide helpline online. Just Google it. It's fairly easy to find. And I hope that you get through this holiday safely. This next section is going to be specifically for people who do have some sort of substance use. If you are on a medication, it's fairly easy to make sure that you have enough of that medication. At least generally it is easy enough to do. However, if you're someone who uses an illegal substance on a regular basis, whether because of an addiction or because of various other reasons, it can be devastating to have to go through withdrawals right as you're expected to do things with family. If you have the self-control, it can be helpful to have a stash put away for the holidays specifically to make sure that you have enough to stay well throughout the holiday. It's very helpful to not be worrying about running out or being at a family member's house several hours away from wherever you are staying and realize that you don't have enough to get you through the entire event. One way you can make sure that you get through the entire holiday festivities without running out, in addition to making sure you have enough, is to also use a little bit less than you normally would. This is true of any intoxicating substance, whether it's an illicit substance like heroin or meth, or a legal substance like alcohol or weed in many areas. Using a little bit less reduces the chance that you're going to engage in behaviors that your family can find problematic. If you drink, it will reduce the chance that you'll be so drunk that people have a problem with the things that you said or did. If you use a drug like heroin, it will reduce the chance that you overdose. For meth, it will reduce the chance that you talk at someone for 3 hours without them really getting a word in edgewise, which is a pretty big tip off to your family that you took a bunch of meth, right? For weed, you don't want to be so stoned that you can't engage in an actual conversation with family members who you do want to talk to. Point is, lower your dose from what you normally take. You can do a little bit of experimenting in the days leading up to the holiday. You know about how much you take every day or with each dose. Reduce that down to half of that. See if it's enough to get through. If it's not, bump it up a little bit. Figure out where your happy points is so that you can get through without being intoxicated as much as you might want to be intoxicated, but that you aren't going through withdrawals. Going through withdrawals at a holiday party sounds absolutely fucking awful. When you do get to the holiday party, it can be helpful if you use just prior to going inside, depending on what it is you're using. For things that last a little while, it can be helpful to do it just prior to going inside because A, you're not getting there while intoxicated already, and B, you are given the longest amount of time before you have to redose. This gives you a chance to get through all the hellos and the how are you doing and the what's going on in your life bull crap, without having to worry about, oh man, I gotta go use, I'm feeling like shit. Certain drugs are a little bit short acting, so that may not be the most helpful, but for things that last longer than 1 or 2 hours, this can be a really helpful tip. And you could get through most of a holiday on some drugs by just taking them just prior to going in. If your family does find your drug use problematic, using in their driveway may not be the best option. Finding a spot to park near their house that's not directly in front of their house, or if you're being dropped off by someone, having them park somewhere just before the house, using a dose that is that slightly lower dose but enough to get you well for a while can be really helpful so that you can get through a lot of the holiday without having to go and redose and stay on top of it, your wellness. One final tip that's specifically for drug users. Consider using a route of administration that lasts a little bit longer. For example, if you typically inject your drugs, which is a pretty short-acting method, consider sometimes smoking it will last a little bit longer, so that can be a good option. You may even be able to snort or eat your drug, both of which will last significantly longer than either injecting or smoking. Eating will last the longest, so that is the best idea if you can do that with your particular drug, although not all drugs allow that. Choosing to switch to a longer acting route of administration works very similarly to using just before going in. It gives you a longer period of time that you will be well before you have to deal with redosing at the party. Depending on the particular drug you're using and the particular route you use, it may be long enough to get you through the entire event without having to redose. This can be really helpful so that you can actually enjoy being there without worrying about withdrawals, without worrying about getting well, without having to look like you just used a bunch of drugs after, you come back to the party from using a bunch of drugs. All in all, it can be a really helpful tip to help you get through that party without feeling like crap. In summary, stock up if you can, if you trust yourself not to use it ahead of time. Take a lower dose so that you are well but not intoxicated and obvious. Use just before going in so that you have a longer period of time before you have to redose. And if possible, use a route that lasts longer so that, again, you have a longer period of time between having to redose, and you may even get through the entire party without having to. This next tip is helpful for anyone who drinks at holiday parties, whether you have a problem with drinking or not. Even if you don't have a problem with drinking, limiting your drinking to a light buzz has a very similar effect to limiting your substance use if you do have a problem with a particular substance. Limiting your drinking helps you get through the holiday without saying or doing something that you will regret later. Monitor yourself. You can use the BAC charts in my other video to help figure out how much drinking is going to get you to that nice buzz level and how much drinking is going to be just too much. A good guide is stay under the level that you would be legally drunk. A BAC below the legal drinking limit is potentially still way too much alcohol for you depending on your particular body chemistry, but it's a good rule of thumb to not overdo it too much. As I said in my alcohol video, usually 1 to 2 drinks is pretty good to have a good, enjoyable night without going too far. So try to stay to that limit. Many people drink during the holidays because it helps ease the social tension of being around people who may be a little challenging to be around sometimes, or all the time. However, making those social situations easier is only useful if you don't drink so much that you start making a fool of yourself. So, keep your drinking light. It'll make it more fun. If you live somewhere where weed is legal, or you just like to smoke weed, because let's be real, lots of people used weed before it was legal too, the same rule applies. Although many people consider weed to be barely a drug, or a light drug, or not a problem, it all kind of depends on where you're at and your relationship with your family and how you are affected by weed. If your family has a problem with weed, taking an edible or consuming your weed in some other method can be a helpful way to do it. Or opt out of weed entirely for the day if that is something that you can do and are interested in doing. If your family has a problem with weed, it may be helpful to opt out of weed entirely. However, if you do choose to use on the holidays, consuming your weed in a way that doesn't leave a weed smell on you can be helpful. Edibles, tinctures, various formulations exist nowadays to help reduce that smell that is a dead giveaway that you smoked pot recently. If your family is okay with weed, ultimately go for it, but be aware that the same rule about not getting overly stoned applies. You know how you interact with weed. Some people can smoke all the weed and appear perfectly normal. Some people do a little bit and they're fine, it's nice, it's helpful. Do a little bit more and holy crap, they can't talk because they're too introverted. It all depends on the person, and some people, I don't know why these people would do weed at a party, but some people do a little bit of weed, they're instantly stuck in their head. Ultimately, know yourself, know how you're affected by it, and try to reduce that use to the point where you're having a good time and not stoned out of your mind on the couch watching whatever stupid Christmas movie your family put on. Regardless of substance use, if you have an area of your life that you are concerned about being talked about or having to talk about at a family gathering, it can be helpful to have a teammate to help you get out of those tricky situations. have a buddy. Have someone who's willing to watch your back and help guide you out of tricky situations that you just don't want to talk about. It is very helpful to brief your buddy on the concerns you have ahead of time, though. If you're bringing a significant other or some other type of buddy, let them know ahead of time what things your family finds problematic about your life, and brief them on what you think are the problems and how you would like them to respond. If you want your buddy to distract or be like, hey, I have something to ask you, or can I talk to you for a minute, or whatever, it can be really helpful to let them know that that's what you're expecting of them ahead of time. If your buddy's already standing there when the person who wants to bring up something stupid comes up to you and brings up something stupid, they could also do something like redirecting the conversation to themselves. Tell them what your expectations are, what your concerns are, and ideally pick a buddy who is actually capable of doing this job. If, for example, you and your buddy both get very drunk at the party, they're not going to be that useful. If your buddy has bigger life problems than you do, you don't want to throw them under the bus in front of you. Pick someone who's capable of doing the job, who's strong enough to do it, responsible enough to do it, and who you trust to actually get you out of those situations. But a buddy can be really helpful and can help divert the conversation from yourself. Another helpful tip is to prepare for awkward conversations ahead of time. Most people generally know the topics that their family is going to make a big fucking deal about. Prepare ahead of time by thinking of ways that you can either answer particular questions, defend yourself, or change the topic entirely. You can even come up with topics that you can change the subject to make it less awkward, depending on the family member and how they're going to approach that particular topic. For example, if the topic is something about your relationships, whether it's your sexual identity, your gender identity, all sorts of different bullshit things that they might bring up, you can instead ask how their relationship is going, or something like that. If you do answer, keep your answers short and simple. The more you explain, the longer you're stuck in that conversation. Keep it short and sweet. If you have family members who you can actually talk to about this, it may also be helpful to brief family members who you do trust that there are certain topics you're not comfortable with. It can be helpful to be like, hey, I don't really want to talk about this in front of these family members. Or, I really am worried about Aunt Becky talking to me about the fact that I don't have kids, or whatever it is. Talk to a family member ahead of time, someone who you trust. Let them know that you have these concerns, and even if they're not your designated buddy, they can still help get you out of these situations if things really start going downhill. They can also help guide problematic family members away from you if that starts to become a problem, particularly at the dinner table where you're all trapped in the same space together. And it can be really helpful for family members who you do trust to know not to bring up certain things in front of certain people. If there are certain family members who don't know that you are not straight or not cis or have a substance use problem or are a sex worker, letting those family members know not to bring it up can be very helpful to avoid putting you in an awkward situation and outing you to the entire family. However, this only works if you can actually trust that family member, so do be aware that sometimes family just sucks. One really effective method for redirecting focus away from your own lifestyle issues is to redirect the conversation to something about the person you're talking to. Most people really like talking about themselves. It's a human flaw, a very egotistical human flaw that we all have at certain times, at least most of us. Because people have this egotistical need to talk about their own lives, it can be used to your advantage to get out of talking about things that you just don't want to talk about. As I gave the example earlier, if someone starts asking you about your relationship, ask them about their relationship. If they start asking you about your job and you're uncomfortable talking about that, ask them how their job is doing. This is a really easy way, for a lot of topics at least, to get out of it. If it's something where that particular person doesn't have a relatable parallel, you can also just ask them generic questions like, how is your life going? How is your family? How is your job? Have you had any fun vacations this year? Have you done anything fun lately? Things like that. Have you seen any good movies? Whatever it may be. You can change the topic this way, and it makes the focus go from you, who doesn't want to be in the spotlight about this particular topic, to them. And it can be a very effective way of getting out of talking about things that you just don't want to talk about. You can also use this as a preemptive option. If a family member that you just know is going to ask you an awkward question starts walking up to you, you can start by saying, hey, Uncle Bob, how's your job going? Or whatever it may be. This starts the conversation talking about them so that it distracts them from whatever it is they want to ask you or talk to you about. You can do this at the dinner table, outside of just one-on-one as well, by specifically asking other family members things about themselves as the conversation goes around the table. If there's a lull in the conversation, automatically jump in with a question for one of your family members so that the conversation continues without you being a part of it. Holidays have one great advantage, and that advantage is that there's usually a lot of food and drinks around, whether they be alcoholic or not. If someone does ask you a question that is a little bit difficult to answer, take a drink or take a bite of food to give yourself a little bit of time to think of a response. Now, if someone asks you a big question and you shove a whole cracker with cheese in your mouth or a whole turkey leg in your mouth, well, it's something pretty obvious that you don't want to talk. But having someone ask you a question and being like, well, gives you the opportunity to think of how you want to respond before you have to start talking. A drink is a very easy way to do this. Hot tip, this also works in interviews. But at holidays, this is particularly helpful because it gives you a chance to formulate a response that will be simple and minimize the amount of social problems that your response could cause for yourself. Responding instinctively can get you into a lot of trouble if you don't plan it out. So take a bite, take a drink of something. It's a really easy way to give yourself just a couple extra seconds to decide what you do and do not want to say. Before and after the actual holiday meal, it can be really helpful to engage in either a movie or a TV show to help distract the family from talking to you. Some families may find this a bit taboo, but most of the time there is so much time before and after the meal that the family is just mulling around. And if there's any children, it's especially easy to do this. It's very helpful to just throw on a movie, throw on a TV show that's sort of holiday related, and the family can sit down and watch it and be distracted from the conversation that they want to have with you. It's not 100% foolproof. The other methods may need to be employed as well, but doing this will reduce the amount of talking that is necessary. And if you seem really into the show, people are less likely to ask you certain questions. Sometimes we need a break from family. Bathrooms can be a great oasis away from family for at least the amount of time it would reasonably take you to, take a shit. They can also be a great place to redose on certain drugs, although be very careful if you do use again at a holiday party to use a very small amount, because the last thing your family or other loved ones want to do is walk in on you after you've overdosed. Bathrooms can be a good oasis, but be aware that they can also be a red flag for your family if you are going very often or spending entirely too long in the bathroom. They're a great oasis, but only for a short period of time and only once every 3 or more hours. A reasonable amount of time where someone may need to pee or poop again. With that said, make sure you're washing your hands, because bathrooms are also a great place to remember to rewash. Finally, have an exit strategy. Holidays can sometimes seem to just go on and on and on, and all you want to do is go home. Plan ahead on how you could potentially get out. If you have a buddy, that buddy can help you with this particular plan. They can help you like, oh, I'm really tired, we need to go home. You can also say that you're very tired and need to go home. You can tell your family that you have something planned for the next day and that you want to make sure you get home and get enough sleep before you have to go there. You can have various reasons that you need to leave at a particular time. Some people, at least in a normal year, will do multiple Christmas activities with different families in the same day. This can give you a great opportunity to be like, well, I need to start heading over to such and such's house. If you really have to get out and you are just done with the family and you need to get out of the house now, there are really two good options. One of them is to excuse yourself and go for a walk, smoke a cigarette and vape, whatever. Although cigarettes, vaping obviously have their risks, but going for a walk, stepping outside can give you some time to get away from the family nonsense. At that time, you can decide whether or not you're going back in and what the repercussions if you choose not to go back in are. If you just need a short break, walk is great. If you need a longer break, walks can give you enough time to think things through. And if you really need to get out of there, you can also come back in and say, hey, I got a call from a friend. They really need me. I think I'm going to head home so that I can talk to them longer. I don't want to take up all the rest of the party being on the phone. Whatever it may be. You can also just tell a family member that you do trust that you just need to get home. Whatever you do, plan out what you think will work with your family ahead of time. It can be really helpful to know how you're going to get out and how you're going to get home after you're done putting up with all the family stuff. Once you do get home, congratulations! You survived! You've made it through the holidays. Now you just gotta get ready for the new year. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope that they go smoothly for you. Cheers. Have a good one. Whether you spend it at home with family or out on someone's deck, wear the masks. I hope it is enjoyable for you in your own way. I also hope that you survive the holidays in the very literal sense. Holidays are so difficult. Like I said, if you need it, get counseling. Holidays are a very hard time for many, many people. I want you to make it to the new year. 2021 will hopefully be better, and if you're watching this in some future time, well, you can either make fun of me for thinking that, or be like, fuck yeah, thankfully it's finally over. Here's to the end of this year, here's to next year, here's to surviving the holidays. Stay safer, open the present of the subscribe button, jingle that bell, and have a drink to the like button. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.